call this meeting of the Sullivan County Delegation to order, and I'm going to slightly adjust the order of the agenda. I would like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would like Representative Merchant to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Representative Merchant. Okay, I would like to begin by our introductions, and I will start, let me see, on my, it would be on, this is, I guess it would be on my left, with Representative Sullivan, please.
Okay. Representative Brian Sullivan, Sullivan County 1, representing Grantham, Springfield, Cornish, and Plainfield, and also the Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Skip Rollins, Sullivan, District 6, representing Newport Unity.
Okay, all right, okay, all right. Okay. All right, sorry, yeah, excuse me, Representative O'Hearn?
Yeah, the meeting is not being broadcast. They're not seeing the meeting, nor is it being on the NCTV.
Okay,
John?
okay,
Oh, wrong John.
yeah, I know, that's the problem, too many Johns.
Mr.
I
Lund.
have a question about whether it's being broadcast on CCTV?
They're right there, you can see them,
Okay,
so they must be getting the Zoom.
I can get the sound, I'm not getting any visuals. Is it being?
He's not getting a visual.
Well, they're not getting a visual because they're not sending out a video, but that doesn't mean they're not receiving whatever you're zooming, they're getting. He's just not showing you his face.
okay, sorry.
Carry on.
Sorry about that. Okay, let's continue. Representative Rollins, please.
Representative Skip Rollins, Sullivan, District 6, representing Newport Unity.
Representative Gary Merchant, District 4, representing Claremont, Ward 2.
Representative Judy Aaron, representing Sullivan County District 7, which is Ackworth, Goshen, Langdon, Leominster, and Washington.
Okay, yeah, okay, then Representative Spilsbury.
Representative Terry Spilsbury, representing Charlestown, Sullivan District 8.
Representative Sue Gottling, Sullivan District 2, Sunapee and Croydon.
Representative Linda Tanner, Sullivan 9, representing Cornish, Croydon, Plainfield, Springfield, Newport, Sunapee, Unity, and Grantham.
Okay, thank you. And Representative Merchant, welcome. I'm sorry, not Representative Merchant, Representative Stapleton, sorry.
We both are great.
Yeah, we're doing introductions.
Thank you.
They want to move the
Use that. Gotta get his attention.
Okay, all right. Okay, Representative Stapleton, we're doing introductions, so if you could introduce yourself, please.
Representative Walt Stapleton, Claremont, Ward 3, Sullivan County District 5.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to have the county commissioners introduce themselves and the rest of the county staff, please.
Commissioner George Hebert, representing Sullivan County. We have
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I apologize. Sorry about that. I apologize. We have two other representatives on Zoom. I'm sorry, Commissioner Hebert. Representative Oxingham and O'Hearn. I didn't introduce them. Go ahead, Representative Oxingham, and then Representative O'Hearn, please.
Yes, Representative Lee Oxenham present. I represent District 1, Plainfield, Springfield, Grantham, and Cornish.
Okay.
Representative O'Hearn, representing Ward 1, Claremont, Sullivan 3, present.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry, and the commissioners again, I didn't, as I said, this Zoom sometimes confuses me. Go ahead, please, Commissioner.
Commissioner George Hebert, representing Sullivan County.
Commissioner Joe Osgood, representing Sullivan County.
And we have with us our county manager, Derek Ferlin, and our department heads, Ted Purdy, Mary Bork and Dave Berry, and our staff.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Hebert. Okay, I'm going to begin, okay, we've done welcome and introductions, we've done the pledge, and now item number 3, the Sullivan County Healthcare Renovation Project Work Group Report. I will turn it over to Representative Sullivan.
Okay, I'm going to stand for this so I can see the screen. The committee's been meeting, I believe we met 6 times, and the meetings are in the report. And I was pleased that it was a very cooperative and collaborative process. We asked a lot of questions, and we got answers to every question we asked. We took a deep dive into this renovation project, renovation/building project, and what the possibilities might be. And, through the course of those 6 meetings, we have reached conclusions and arrived with recommendations. So with that, if we could fire up the presentation, that would be great. There we go. Okay, so members of the work group were 4 representatives and 1 commissioner, myself as chair, Judy Aaron as representative, Representative Gary Merchant, Representative Skip Rollins, and Commissioner George Hebert. So those were the 5 members of the team. Basically, the motion that was made at our last delegation meeting is represented here as work group objectives. Our first objective was to find ways to reduce the total cost of the project to a target of approximately $35 million. Second, to explore funding opportunities, including federal loan programs and state bonds. And third, to research the requirements or constraints for using federal funds such as ARPA and congressional designated funds. So that was our charge, and we tried to focus on that charge. Go ahead. At the suggestion of Representative Aaron, we explored common goals for the work group members. And I would like to think that perhaps these goals are common to everyone in the room, but at least it was agreed upon by the 5 of us that these were goals that we could settle on and agree upon. So first of all, it was agreed that we want to do the best for the health and well-being of residents and staff of the nursing home. Second, it was agreed that we do not want to close the nursing home. So essentially, that's a commitment to fixing it. Somehow we need to fix it. Or live with it the way it is, which I don't think was an option that we were attracted to. Third, it was agreed that we wanted to find a way to move forward with this project. And fourth, it's agreed that the current nursing home is inadequate. We discussed some other goal possibilities, and essentially, while I don't think we ended up disagreeing with any of them in the long run, we didn't want to limit ourselves up front by narrowing our ability to consider possibilities and make choices. So one of the things that loomed large in our process was the impact of facility guidelines provided by the Facility Guidelines Institute. This is a nonprofit organization. In the report, there's a definition of it, but essentially this is an organization that sets guidelines, and I was asked earlier today, are they guidelines or are they requirements? When they're adopted by the Department of Health and Human Services, they are requirements. So essentially, once the 2018 guidelines were adopted in the middle of 2019, they were in existence for a while before the New Hampshire Department of Health and Human Services adopted them. But once they were adopted, any construction or renovation programs would have to follow those guidelines. Following those guidelines added an additional 19 square feet for every bed space, a substantial square footage increase. And that was a total of 2,575 square feet increased solely because of the, oops, I didn't fix that, Gary, I guess, the new guidelines. And I'm going to apologize ahead of time if there are typos in here. I realized as I was getting ready to send it out that I had lost half of the slides. They just sort of vanished. The first half should be better than the second half, perhaps, because I frantically retyped the whole thing. But at any rate, you can take points off for every typo. These guidelines really drove a substantial portion of what was required with this project. Next. We are asked to target approximately $35 million for this project. And there are basically two attempts made at approaching the $35 million mark. Warren Street, in their 17-page document that is an addendum to the full report, took a stab at it. They identified $5 million that would need to be set aside for soft costs, things like equipment, furniture, fees, permits, and such. And that would leave $30 million for the actual construction. That forced them to recommend an elimination of any addition to Stearns. So all of the options that were considered over the last several years did some type of addition to Stearns. There was one that was on the north end, one that was on the back side, the front side. In the end, there was a south side addition, but in order to hit $35 million, there would be no addition. It would also convert semi-private rooms to single rooms. It's a less expensive way of renovating the Stearns building. Unfortunately, that would also reduce the bed count to approximately 73 beds in Stearns, which is a fairly dramatic loss in beds, which would result in revenue reductions, which we'll come to in a little bit. The alternate $35 million concept also converted double rooms to single. This concept would have a total of 89 beds, a loss of 67. This is for the full nursing home complex. Loss of 67 from the current 156 beds combined in Stearns and McConnell. So again, a very significant drop in the number of beds in the facility. It would leave 9 beds on each of the 3 floors of Stearns, and it would eliminate a variety of pieces that have been considered in other projects. There's the Main Street and on the ground floor, the new lobby, the chapel, moving laundry from the jail to the nursing home. It would remove the county offices and a variety of other things that are listed in the full report in Appendix C. So those were the two $35 million attempts that we were provided with. Next. We also asked Ted Purdy to provide a breakout of exactly what the reduction in the number of beds would cause, especially with regard to the revenue stream. He did it in increments of 8. The way the staffing is done in the nursing home, it's the most efficient staffing is in groups of 8. So if you're going to chop off a group of rooms, increments of 8 made sense. It's important to point out that as I'm basically, and you'll see it in the Appendix B, that he goes in increments of 8, so an 8, 16, and straight on up to 48. there are not designs that reflect all of those various reductions. Coming up with a design that would cut 8 rooms is something that has not been done, but basically it was the most efficient way to show the gradual reduction in numbers of beds. And also to reduce complexity, the Medicaid rate of revenue was used for each reduced bed. That's the lowest rate of reimbursement. There's 3 different types of resident reimbursement. You've got about 111, I think, that are on Medicaid, so they get the lowest level of reimbursement. You also have some who are private pay, so essentially the nursing home sets a reasonable and competitive private pay rate and charges that to folks who have assets and are able to pay. Many of those folks are on their way to becoming Medicaid residents, just haven't spent down their assets yet. The third category is Medicare, which is always temporary, because Medicare is effectively for people who have spent at least 3 days in the hospital and have come to the facility for rehabilitation. And they have to continually qualify to remain on Medicare, and it's a fairly stringent process to effectively boot them off as soon as they no longer qualify for Medicare. So at any rate, when we talk about lost revenue, and we talk about lost Medicaid revenue, in reality, if you eliminate beds, you would be eliminating private pay beds and Medicare beds as well, likely. And so the actual reduction in revenue would probably be higher than straight Medicaid. A reduction of 8 beds would reduce the revenue by approximately the annual revenue, or at least the first year revenue, I should say, by $589,635, and that's just in year 1. Mr. Purdy also provided us with an accumulative effect over the course of 29 years, which is the length of the bond, and that cumulative effect, especially compounding, was, very substantial. A reduction of 16 beds would reduce the revenue by $1,060,677 million in year 1. And the highest number of bed reduction, 48, that was calculated, and you can check the Appendix B for all the detail, but that would reduce revenue by $3,182,032 in the first year. So the work group was duly impressed with the amount of revenue that would be lost if we started cutting down on the number of beds in a substantial way.
That's the net. That's the net loss. Not so. When he gave us the projections, he took the gross revenue less some of the expenses. So that was
yes.
the net loss. So
that's the net loss. Yes. So basically, there's a lot more numbers involved than what I stuck onto a slide here. Basically, when you reduce a bed, you lose revenue because of the lost bed. You also save money because of the reduced staffing, reduced food, and so on. So there are lost revenues and savings that are combined, and this takes into full account that combination of lost revenue and money saved. Thank you. Moving on. We also invited Warren Street, who is the architect, and Milestone, who is the construction manager, to spend one of our meetings with us, and we posed some questions in advance and more in person to them to try to drill down on exactly what kind of work they did to create the original plan and what kind of work that might be done to create alternative plans. Earlier, we looked at a $35 million Warren Street proposal that was part of their presentation to us. Question, one of the questions asked is, how did the cost escalate from 35 million to 54 million? One of the things that we were asked to clarify is that Warren Street sends money to the, or no, not money, sends numbers to the county. The county would often massage those numbers, taking into account certain other aspects that Warren Street was unaware of. So sometimes the county numbers are a little bit different than the Warren Street numbers. Just a caveat that they wanted to add in. For example, we looked at an amount of $54 million that's listed here. The reality is that Warren Street didn't have a $54 million total on any of theirs. That was a massage number, so to speak. Derek, is this misbehaving on us, or?
We'll know in 18 seconds.
Okay. All right, I'll talk fast. Basically, the Harriman study was one that was done in 2017, and it was sort of when the county was first, there we go. It was when the county was first starting to look at doing a nursing home renovation. And so I'll keep plugging along here. I've got these, luckily, here. It went to sleep. There we go. Magic touch.
Thanks, John.
So way back in 2017, when we first asked for, I don't even know who Harriman is. Is that a consultant, or? When they were asked to do an estimate on a renovation, the number came in at $20 million, $772,572, and it was, by all accounts, a fairly rough estimate. A lot of things were not included. Plus, it was 2017, so as we've come to learn, time makes a difference. In June of 2018, the Harriman study was updated by Warren Street. Warren Street came into the process at that point, and they took a look at the Harriman study, and they said, you know, with our taking another look at it, and with another year gone by, and adding in some soft costs that I believe weren't included with the Harriman study, the cost update in June of 2018 was $34,249,462. So it was up by $14 million right then. March of 2019, the planning had stepped forward substantially more, and at that point, consideration of a north side addition had been taken off the table. Consideration of a backside addition had been taken off this table, as well as a front side addition. And the Warren Street, working with the commissioners, concluded that a south side addition with the demolition of Sanders would be the way the project would proceed. Up until then, Sanders was still going to be renovated. It became apparent, and through discussions with everyone, I'm certainly convinced that tearing down Sanders is definitely the best path, regardless of what type of project is done. It's a building that's beyond its day. But with that south side addition and Sanders demolition, now we're up to $38,808,000, or almost $809,000 on the cost. July 2020, another year had gone by. If you look at the Warren Street document, they went through a lot of detail as to all of the various issues they had to address, everything from sewer issues with Claremont to, including the new FGI requirements, there's a laundry list of issues that they needed to address, and they came up with a detailed plan, detailed drawings, addressed all of those issues, and at that point, as we were bearing down on a delegation vote, the price was, their number was $50,950,000. The number we ended up voting on was $54 million. We didn't go through the trouble of trying to figure out where Warren Street and the county made adjustments, but bottom line is that shows the process of escalation in cost from the Harriman study all the way through July of 2020. Also, in the Warren Street document, there is a nearly $60 million price tag put on building new, either on the Unity campus or elsewhere. So they also did it was a fairly rough estimate, but they did provide some numbers with regard to the cost of building new. Next slide. We asked what the impact would be of full or partial redesigns on the timelines. A full redesign would take approximately 18 months of planning, with 5 months for bidding and bonding, et cetera. And a partial redesign would take 12 to 16 months, depending on how dramatic the redesign was, with still the same 5 months for bidding, bonding, and so on. And one of the things that we've come to understand is that time truly is money, and when you delay, escalation happens. So that 18-month to 16-month, those windows would have real money attached to them. Also asked, we keep hearing numbers about escalation costs. Warren Street provided an estimate on escalation of 5% to 7.5% annually, with a roughly 10% escalation for the 18 to 24 month time frame out for construction. The milestone estimate was about 10% annually. The reality is, as we've seen construction prices and material prices change up and down over the course of the last year in particular, and in general over the last many years, it's difficult to pin that number down exactly. We did press Milestone in particular hard on whether or not we've heard that lumber prices went way up during the pandemic. We've also heard that they've come substantially down as the pandemic has progressed. So we pressed them as to whether or not the 10% escalation that they generally plan on is still a good number. And they said based on other materials like steel, which continues to go up, and labor, which continues to be a challenge in a tight labor market, they said they still feel that a 10% escalation rate is appropriate, but frankly, without doing some deep dives into current costs of getting the work done, you can't really know what the escalation rate is, and I think we've built in some mechanisms to deal with that. Next slide. Next slide. We'll do the next slide. Screen's working, the computer froze. One of the activities that we engaged in as a work group was looking at, literally brainstorming what options might be out there for us. And we came up with a fairly lengthy list. This list of 5 considers the actual design and construction options that the work group came up with. One option, well, actually, rather than read through them, I've got each one of them on its own slide, so let's go to the next. Maybe. In evaluating those options, we went through and we evaluated each one. We eliminated, frankly, 3 of the 5, and we kept 2 of them alive. But we used these standards for evaluating the options. You know, cost, the timeline that would be involved, economics, like revenue flow, the patient care, needs of staff, codes and compliance, the ability to attract private pay residents, needs of family, and the tax impact. Next. So using those options and the standards for evaluating, we looked first at the option of starting over with new architect and construction manager. One of the certainly one of the options would simply be to say that we've lost trust in Warren Street and Milestone. The work group reached the conclusion that we felt that they had the expertise and competence to maintain our faith in moving forward with them. They also have a great deal of knowledge about the Sullivan County facilities, and starting over with new folks would probably generate some substantially different ideas, but would also take a great deal of time for a new architect, a new construction manager to get up to speed with exactly what is involved with this project. Next. We could repurpose Stearns and build a new nursing home. This option was eliminated since any repurposing of Stearns would require all of the infrastructure issues that exist in Stearns to be addressed. Those infrastructure issues would only be fixed at some substantial expense to the county, and then you'd have to put the new construction on top of that. The idea behind this was not necessarily using Stearns as a nursing home facility, sort of using Stearns like we used Sanders in the past. The thought was that you'd have a lot more space in Stearns than you would need for the purposes that it could serve. You'd have a lot of expense in ramping it up. You might be able to avoid some of the FGI requirements because you wouldn't be housing residents there. But in the end, it seemed like wasteful on both ends. So we eliminated that option. Next. We also looked at changing locations and building new. Personally, I was approached by people in my own town saying, can't you put the facility out where people know where it is? You know, one of the main drags in the county. And frankly, I think that would be great if we could do that. In the end, we determined that it was, I don't know if unworkable is the best word, not desirable because of some of the downsides to making the move. The upside would be having a dazzling new building that everybody could see and appreciate. The downsides would be leaving campus would leave the biomass facility behind, which we've invested a lot of money in, and it's more of a power plant than the jail needs. So essentially, we would have the jail overpowered by the biomass unit, and a lot of that would go to waste. There would also be other operational expenses that could be incurred, such as the loss of labor from corrections. for laundry and food preparation. There's some money saved in that. It would also leave, either leave residents in McConnell isolated in Unity, because that building is sound, but Stearns is not. So Stearns and Sanders would be either abandoned or repurposed or torn down. But McConnell, we'd have to figure out whether we're going to bring them along and house them with the new Stearns, so to speak, or leave them behind and have them somewhat isolated out in Unity. All in all, we concluded that the downsides to relocating were greater than the upsides, so we eliminated that. Next. The fourth option was, we decided to hold this one in reserve. This is keeping the current architect and construction manager, create a new design on the Unity campus. Basically, if the last option doesn't work out, we would need to fall back on this option as a alternative. And so if the cost of the current design is deemed unacceptable to the delegation, once the bidding process is completed, we may need to take another look here. We do need to recognize that it involves additional expenses relating to the cost of a new set of architectural plans. I think that came to the tune of about $1.5 million, as well as the cost of delays, which we looked at earlier. The new design would, I think be about 18 months in the making, plus construction time. So that's not our preferred option. Next slide. Our preferred option was to move forward with the current design and construction plan, with some adjustments to the process, which we'll talk about. We are recommending that the current design be resubmitted for subcontractor bidding. In doing so, we're acknowledging that the $35 million project, while technically could be done, is not going to provide for the needs of Sullivan County. We are also recommending that the county hire a consultant to provide a pre-bid cost estimate. We don't want to be left in the position again of going through the process of bidding out the project and then get a surprise at the end of that. So the pre-bid estimate is designed to provide all of us with knowledge up front before the bidding happens. It also provides us with the ability to look at bonding options while the bidding is going on. One of the things we've become aware of is that you can't wait until the bidding is complete to start looking at financing. Most subcontractors will give you a 30-day hold on their price at best. Many of them prefer 15 days. My sense is if you can time the bidding with the bonding properly, you can have the money in hand and you can give them the preferred 15 days. So if you can get a better price because you gave them a shorter window that they have to hold the price for, we ought to try to do that. And bottom line is, it's going to take well over 30 days to get the bond lined up anyways. So you really have to be coordinating the two of those activities at the same time. If you've got a pre-bid price, that gives you an idea of what kind of bonding you're going to need to do. It gives you a very good idea of what your post-bid price is going to be, so that surprises are unlikely to happen. Next. In addition to the five big options, basically, which effectively laid out the full project, there are a variety of other sort of sub-options that we talked about. One would be to seek a second opinion or design, on design or cost. We believe that hiring of that consultant to provide the pre-bid cost estimate will help to provide some of that second opinion, a second look, so that we've got some of that information. Second option that we considered was eliminating McConnell facelift from the project. What we're recommending is that the McConnell refresh be put on hold, that we basically wait that was intended to be one of the last things in the project anyways. If for any reason we're seeing cost overruns, McConnell is deemed something that we can put on hold and do at a later date, separate from this project. If we're running well under budget, it might be something that we could say we've got the bond money, maybe this is a good time to take advantage and move ahead with that. But it's a decision that we don't have to make now, that we could make down the road. We could eliminate the commissioner's office from the project. This turned into pretty much a catch-22, as did the next one, moving the Ahern functions into the new construction. Basically, we talked about doing a partial redesign, moving either the commissioner's office or Ahern out of the new construction. Either one of them or both would result in a partial redesign and a substantial delay, and essentially we might save about $5 million by doing that. However, with cost escalations, we would probably spend $5 million at the end of the day because of the delay, and we wouldn't have those spaces in the building. So you spend the same amount of money and you forfeit the space. And that's not talking about whether or not either of those is a good idea. They both might be a grand idea. There are some advantages to moving the commissioner's offices in that it might provide more space for the sheriff to move into when the commissioners and the front office folk move out. Might also provide an opportunity to get the UNH extension folks out of the building a few doors down and back into the Newport building to provide, well, to possibly get that building off the books and avoid renovations there at some point. But the bottom line is, when we looked at the cost of delaying, it just didn't make any sense to do a redesign just for the purpose of getting those two pieces out. If we were doing a redesign down the road because of other reasons, I think that those ought to be revisited to figure out if that's what we want to do. But that's not the recommendation here. Number 5, visiting other facilities. We think that would make great sense if we did find ourselves in a redesign at some point, but at this point, we've got the design, and visiting other facilities would simply give us an opportunity to second guess the design, which if you're not going to second guess it, then it's not time well spent. Next. We talked about seeking a public-private partnership. I think this was a piece that was in consideration when we were talking about possibly doing assisted care as a part of this project. Assisted care would be a substantial expansion of the project, which we're not recommending, so we don't think that this is ready for prime time at this point. Number 7, cutting beds. We looked at the revenue impact that would have on the nursing home, and in the end, we were persuaded that maintaining the current 156-bed for which the nursing home is licensed would be in our best interest. We've been successful at maintaining a revenue stream that allows us to nearly break even. A lot of nursing homes don't do that. If we cut a substantial number of beds, we would join other nursing homes which, on an annual basis, subsidize the nursing home to the tune of for up several million dollars a year. Good, go ahead. Okay, we talked about financing. There are three types of financing that we looked at. One of them is the traditional municipal bond, and I discussed this a little bit earlier. This is the bond that's purchased either in January and July. It bundles up a whole lot of bonds from municipal entities that have projects going, and the advantage of high volume is put into to use, so it provides the lowest interest rates of any. It does not have the ability to prepay, which is why we're recommending a combination of both. Get the lowest interest rate possible on a chunk of this, and that's going to run for 29 years, no ifs, ands, or buts. You can't get out of it early. And perhaps go with the second option, municipal bond with a prepay option, which would require us to include fees in the total principal of the bond. So you're borrowing a little bit more to cover those fees, but at the end of the day, you can prepay if you come into money from various sources that we'll talk about. And you also aren't bound by the January, July timeframes. We did talk about the bond anticipation note for the standard bond. With this bond, we can simply time it to get the money when we need it, and basically just look at the application process and processing time and just back it out and make the application 2 or 3 months early to anticipate when you need the money. The third option that we came up with, a USDA loan. It does have a slightly higher interest rate, which is obviously undesirable. It can be prepaid, which, as I just said, has got its upsides. It does also require a federal approval of the construction plan. At a glance, there is some attractiveness to that last piece. Having the USDA taking a look at our construction plan and giving it a thumbs up or down might have some benefit. On the other hand, asking the feds to approve our plan after we've already run it past DHHS and others might be getting us into trouble too. And frankly, I think we'd rather get the second look from our consultant that we hire rather than from the feds. So I think the USDA loan is probably the least desirable of the three. But I think what is desirable is a combination of standard bond and a prepayable bond or loan. Funding. We looked at a variety of funding sources. One source was money that we already have on hand. Looking at the capital reserves, there's some of that money that is earmarked for things like the sheriff's vehicle replacement, but money that's not reserved, that's been put away for this project over recent years, is approximately $5 million. So that's money that doesn't need to be borrowed. ARPA funds, we still have approximately $7 million available for the project out of ARPA, which gives us a total of $12 million on hand that thereabouts that we can use towards a project, money that does not have to be financed. The federal budget earmark funds, it's probably got a better name than that, but that's what I remembered. This is an application that's been made through Shaheen's office. We've asked for $2 million through the budgeting process, and we've made the first cut. They have not eliminated us, but there's a long ways to go. And, you know, at the end of the day, we've got to have a federal budget in order to get this money. If If Washington doesn't come through with the budget, and we've seen how that works, or doesn't work, then this money will never become available. And frankly, even if they do come up with a budget, there's still several more hoops to get through to get fully approved for this money. So we're not at all sorry that we made the application, but not at all spending that money now. There's also an increase that would occur in the capital component of the Medicaid reimbursement. Ted Purdy presented to the group that essentially when you do a project like this and invest money in a capital project, the amount of money that comes back in the capital component of Medicaid reimbursement, in this case, would virtually double. And we would realize an annual $374,000 in new reimbursements that we haven't had in past years. We can do it whatever we want with that money. But certainly one option would be to take that money and put it towards bond repayment. So as we get closer to having actual prices and so on, I think it's going to be important to figure out what the bond repayment picture looks like. At future meetings, I expect that we will be providing that information when we have more details. But having $374,000 to put toward it will help. Next. I'm going to skip this one and come back to it. We also have a biomass bond that will be retired in 2028. If I recall correctly, that's about $250,000 per year. So again, that's in addition to the $375,000. It's not available now, but it's the payments that we're making now. It's sort of like when you pay off your car. You can either put the money in the bank for the payments, or you can buy a new car. In this instance, we can pay off a bond and use that bond payment money to go towards a different bond for the nursing home. We've also gotten some more information recently on federal infrastructure legislation. There are several $1 billion set aside. And how much was it, Derek?
10?
$10 billion. I doubt we could get it all. But there are possibilities for applying for money through the infrastructure legislation if and when that happens, because that's not in place yet either. But these are things that are in the works, and they're working hard in Washington to try to make it happen. If it does, we may have some opportunities there, which is, again, why, going back to the financing, we want to have some of this financing done in prepayable bonds or loans, so that if we get $2 million from Shaheen or $5 million from the infrastructure, we can put that towards the prepayable bond and immediately reduce our bond payment, or shorten the time period. I'm not sure which would happen. But going back to the first on here, the County Nursing Home Capital Reserve Fund is an idea that Representative Aaron brought to us, and rather than me trying to paraphrase it, if you don't mind, would you describe
Sure.
it?
Yes. So I submitted a bill during our times frame that to submit legislation. Prior to that, I was working with the Legislative Budget Office, LBA, the Legislative Budget Assistant. And what this is would be a capital reserve fund designated just for county nursing home renovations. We have 11 county nursing homes in the state, so it's not like there's, a whole bunch of nursing homes that will be clamoring for funds right away. We also know, that Cheshire County has already finished their renovation. I believe Rockingham is also.
Rockingham's finished, Cheshire's in progress.
Cheshire's in progress. So ours is in there, and then perhaps Coos County might come afterwards. But what this is a capital reserve fund set up at the state level. I suggested that it be managed by Department of Health and Human Services, since they are the ones that would be familiar with the nursing home project, since they are involved in the project approval and licensing and so forth. And monies that would be deposited into this fund would be possibly monies that would be allocated to DHHS for the use of capital reserve projects, as well as any kind of other state monies that might be available, as well as federal funding that might be available through DHHS. And I have spoken to members of the Finance Committee, especially Chairman Weiler, and he is very much in favor of this, is co-sponsoring this legislation. So, you know, there's a possibility of this fund being available at the state level, whereby counties can apply for funding help for these county nursing homes. And I made it clear to, folks who I was working with to put this together, that we've come to a point now in the state where our counties are going to have more and more difficulty funding these kinds of renovation and improvement projects because of the FGI and the changes in FGI. And we've even gotten notice, a white paper that FGI has just put out, that will be seeking or recommending guidelines whereby rooms would be private rooms as opposed to semi-private. So anybody in the next round of FGI who's looking to do any kind of renovations would be looking potentially at having to put in enough space for private rooms. That's a huge, huge increase in cost. So with the recognition that the costs are kind of driven by the facilities guidelines, and our counties are becoming less likely to be able to afford these projects without raising taxes exorbitantly, it's clear that the state really needs to help the counties in doing these projects going forward. So this was the impetus in my putting this legislation in, and I'm sure it's got bipartisan support, and I hope that we can get this through. So that's what this bill is all about.
She mentioned bipartisan support. I've offered to co-sponsor it, so I guess that's where that comes from.
No, I have others too.
Oh, good. Essentially, there's a variety of possibilities for so-called found money. I wish they were more well-defined and guaranteed, but it's, I think, the work group's recommendation that we keep pursuing these sources as well as any other that we can identify to bring some funding to Sullivan County. Next. Our last charge as a work group was to look into federal constraints on use of funds. The primary constraint would be Davis-Bacon Act, which requires the payment of prevailing wages to workers on various federal projects. At present, none of the funding that we've identified that we are going to be getting would kick this in. I'm not sure if the infrastructure money might do it. If there was enough of it, we might actually decide that paying people well is a good idea. I kind of think so. But anyways, at this point, we did not identify constraints on the use of funds. Okay, conclusions. These conclusions sort of look back to the original charge. The first conclusion is that we were unable to identify a nursing home project that would stay within the $35 million target that we were presented with. Second conclusion is that we have identified $10 to $12 million in currently available funds to put toward the project. Third, we've not identified any, as I just said, any no, I'm blanking out, the Bacon. Davis Bacon. I say Nelson. It's probably looking at Benny. Yeah, it didn't find any Davis Bacon issues. Next. Recommendations. We have a variety. The first would be to update the plans for the renovation project. A couple things happened towards the end of the last process. As things are going out to bid, Department of Human Services, Health and Human Services came back to us with various adjustments they wanted to have made to the plans. Those adjustments appear currently in addendums to the plan. In addition, some of the questions and issues raised by subcontractors resulted in additional addendums attached to the plan. Warren Street has strongly recommended to clean it up so that the plan is clear and concise, so that a subcontractor doesn't miss an addendum and come up with an inaccurate bid because of bad information. So the first step is to get a clean plan from Warren Street, and secondly, to hire a consultant to provide a cost estimate prior to sending the bid project out to bid, and to review the bids once received. So we feel that consultant cost estimator is an important piece of this process, and we need to fine-tune exactly how that's going to work, but we feel that that's a critical piece so that we go in with eyes wide open. Actually, I guess I put that in twice. Remember how I said I was typing really fast? Yeah, I think I put something in twice in the last slide, too. So anyways, I put it in twice because it really, really is important. The county will then ask the construction manager to seek subcontractor bids to provide the county with a new guaranteed maximum price. And again, with eyes wide open, having a pretty good idea what it's going to be before we put it out there. Next. Number 4, we recommend that the delegation appropriate funds necessary to accomplish the recommendations on the earlier page. An updated design would cost approximately $60,000. The cost estimator would cost approximately $55,000. The bidding process for guaranteed maximum price, about $70,000. A contingency for all of the above would be $10,000. Obviously, if any of this money is more than is needed, the money would be returned back to the Capital Reserve Fund, but the source of the funding would be the Capital Reserve Fund to a total of $195,000. And frankly, I will be making a motion to that effect at the appropriate moment. Next. As we've discussed, the county should establish a blend of financing vehicles to take best advantage of low interest rates and ability to pay some of the principal in advance if the opportunity arises. The delegation will provide support for the establishment of a New Hampshire Nursing Home Capital Reserve Fund. I'm doing so by co-sponsoring it. Many of us can do so by supporting it in our various roles as representatives. And the county should continue to seek additional sources of funding to support the nursing home project. And I believe that's the final slide. So I will turn it back to the chairman and take it from there.
Okay, thank you, Representative Sullivan, for your very thorough report. Now, are there any questions questions of Representative Sullivan from the delegation about this report?
Actually, before we do that, it occurs to me that I intended to also toss it back to the other members of the work group if you have additions, corrections, or anything else you'd like to say.
Okay, that's a very good point. I'll let other members of the work group talk if they wish to make
I just want to make more of a comment than a question. I just want to commend the work group for the collegiality, cooperation that we experienced during this 6 meetings, and also to your leadership as the chair in getting it accomplished. So thank you.
I second that.
I'll third it.
You third it? Okay. Commissioner Hebert, I don't know if you have any remarks.
I just want to thank Representative Sullivan. He did a great job. And he really handled the process through the committee very well. So, my hats off.
Thank you.
I will now, are there any other questions from the delegation of either Representative Sullivan or other members of the work group about this report that Representative Sullivan has given to us tonight? Are there any on Zoom, Representative O'Hearn or Representative Oxingham? Do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, good. Thank you, Representative O'Hearn. Representative Oxingham?
No, I do not. It was
Okay,
a
are you
very
done?
thorough presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure. So I appear to be no questions, so now I will entertain a motion in regards to this, if you want to make a motion, Representative Sullivan.
I do. I move that the delegation appropriate funds necessary to, A, update the design for the nursing home plan, B, to cover the cost of an estimator, C, to cover the bidding process for guaranteed maximum price, and finally, a contingency of $10,000 and all of that, the cost being a total of $195,000 to be taken from the capital reserve fund.
Thank you. Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Second? Okay. All right. Second by okay, so Representative Stapleton. Okay. All right. Is that any, okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Representative O'Hearn.
So I'm not sure if Oxingham has the same problem, but it's hard to hear you guys, so I didn't hear who made the motion and who seconded it.
Okay, so Representative Sullivan made the motion, Representative Stapleton seconded it.
Sullivan and Stapleton.
Okay, Sullivan, Stapleton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Mr. Chairman, we do have permission to take our mask down when we want to speak.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Okay, and I wasn't very clear about that.
Make it easier for you.
Okay, good. So I guess we've been asked, because people can't understand very well, when you're speaking, you're allowed to take your mask down, okay? In case, I don't know, can everybody hear me? I have a pretty loud voice, but if you can hear,
Yes,
that's
we
fine.
hear, Mr. Chair.
But you have permission to take down your mask while you're speaking. Okay, any other questions, or you understand the motion? Okay, now we're gonna have to, a roll call vote. Representative O'Hearn, do you have a roll call sheet?
Yes, I do, and I apologize to the other representatives, but I didn't hear who was present or not, so if I don't hear an answer the first time, I'll call it a second time to make sure that you're present or not, so.
Okay, I'm barely understanding. You might have a problem with Representative Oxingham. Okay, so whenever ready, the clerk will call the roll on the motion, please.
Yes. Representative Aaron.
Yes.
Representative Cowan.
It's not here.
Not present.
Not present.
Thank you. Thank you. Representative Gotland.
Yes.
Representative Mergent.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Oxingham.
Yes.
Representative Rollins.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Yes.
Thank you. Representative Smith,
He is not present.
Representative Spielberg,
Yes?
Representative Stapleton,
Stapleton.
Yeah, he was calling you, Representative Stapleton.
Yes.
thank you. Representative Tanner,
Yes.
Representative Sullivan, Vice Chair,
Yes.
and the Chair, Cloutier.
The chair, yeah, Representative Cloutier votes yes.
So 11 yeses, no nays.
Okay, the motion passes 11 to 0. Okay, thank you very much, Representative O'Hearn. Okay, one other thing, and I've chatted with, before the meeting, chatted with Representative Sullivan, and I would like to, and I think he and I both agree, that we ought to continue to authorize the work group to continue supervising the project when it comes to things like bonding, bidding,
Cost estimator.
yeah, process, the whole process. And I remember when we created this, as you may remember at our July meeting, the work group is just gonna make a report tonight. It didn't necessarily saying about finishing its business, finishing its purpose. So unless there's an objection, I am going to authorize the work group to continue working on this and trying to meet its goals. Are there any objections? Otherwise, we could have a motion.
We don't need a motion.
Any objections? And any other members of the work group want to chime in? Are you okay? Yes, Representative
I
Merchant.
just
you
want
have-
to be sure that we're including the Commissioner Hebert.
Commissioner Hebert, I'm sorry about that, Commissioner. This is a bit of an unusual group. We've never done this sort of thing since I've been on the delegation, so you're okay with that, correct? Because I think we've done, the work group, Representative Sullivan and the work have done an outstanding job in identifying the issues and the concerns, and whatever I think it really needs to continue to satisfy, finish the job and do what we can, and hopefully we can vote, maybe next year on a nursing home project. But I think we made great strides in the last few months. That's my personal opinion, thanks to Representative Sullivan's leadership, but everybody working together and trying to do it in a bipartisan manner. So I'd like the work group to continue, and I would authorize it. Unless there's an objection, I'm going to authorize the work to continue. Okay? Yeah, all right, is everybody in agreement? Okay, thank you.
Will you be doubling our pay?
Or doubling, okay, yeah, why not? One of the things,
Representative O'Hearn has a question.
yes, I'm sorry, Representative O'Hearn, please.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to hear what you were saying there,
But-
Mr. Chair, but who is going to do that? You kept saying the clerk, and I'm not sure who that is.
Subcommittee.
Yeah, the work group, is just authorizing them to continue their work.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was hearing clerk, and I'm like, what?
Okay, but you understand what I meant?
Now I do.
Okay, good. And there's no objection from other members of the delegation, so then I will authorize the worker to continue, because the way we made the motion, there was no really end. They said we were just to submit a report, present a report tonight, so had nothing about, well, that's, your work's done. Okay, the only other thing, item number 7, and I don't know whether you want to do this tonight, Representative Sullivan, review and ratification of the minutes of the September 27th work group meeting. Yeah. Yeah, okay, I'm taking it out of order because I wanted to sort of get it done. I appreciate your bringing that up, Representative Tanner. I sort of like to get this all and move on to, we've got a few other topics as well.
I expect that we are going to be meeting in the next few weeks, so rather than take up time with the whole group, we can just approve our minutes when next week.
Okay, you can do it at your own meeting. Okay, thank you.
We'll have minutes from this meeting too, so.
Okay, all right, okay, good. And so if people want to look at the minutes later and in the future, you'll have other minutes, I'm sure. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to move on to item number 4, other business, Sullivan House project update. I assume that's the county manager?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask Superintendent Barry to come up and join me. We're going to sort of tag team this update. So, what's that? Yeah, there's one right here too. We'll be all right. So we're a couple months away from our expected completion date, which is pretty exciting. For those of you that visited on site, you had a good chance to see the work that was in progress. The contractor team is still doing a great job trying to juggle some pretty challenging conditions as far as material delays and just managing the end part of construction. An old saying in project management is when the project is 90% done, that's when you've got 10% of the construction left and 90% of the effort. So there's a lot that has to happen in the last couple of months, and that's kind of where we are right now. In fact, this morning we had a bit of unpleasant news. We actually had a theft on site. Some folks broke in through one of the windows on the upper level that was not installed yet and stole a bunch of tools.
Yeah.
However, this morning we had somebody, an anonymous tipster, told us they knew who it was, and so Claremont Police had already responded by about 10 o'clock this morning and recovered most of the tools, and so they were working on getting them all back. So that's just one of those things where we don't anticipate any significant delays because of that, but it was pretty unfortunate. But we've started to turn our attention to, okay, when construction is done, we want to transition into moving people in, and I know we had some discussion in the last year about limiting the the out-of-county residents to 5% of the total. So Dave has done some great work in identifying Sullivan County residents that are scattered in recovery housing facilities across the state, and his numbers really blew our mind. So it gave us a great deal of confidence that we are going to have no trouble filling the house with Sullivan County residents, which I think is a great thing. It's going to be a great asset for our county. And it's going to give us confidence that we're going to be able to pay our bills, so this will be a self-sufficient operation, and it should not require any subsequent taxpayer subsidies, which I also think is a great thing. And there's one other piece I was going to say about that. I can't remember. Well, I guess, so what Dave has been hearing, people are pounding down his door. So this, I'm talking about employers. Our local employers are clamoring for these men and women so that they can hire them. And I think that's also pretty exciting. We've always talked about the workforce development component of this facility and really helping folks earn a great wage. And so that's going to be a significant boost to their sobriety and their recovery process. If they're able to provide for themselves and their families, I think there's less temptation to go back to some of those old habits. So I'll let Dave kind of fill you in on the specifics of the exact number and the employers that he's been talking to recently, because it's pretty exciting stuff.
Good evening. I reached out this week to 13 facilities that we work with regularly. These agencies assist us at times with some of our aftercare components, particularly if these individuals live out of county. The facilities are all throughout the state: Farnham in Manchester, Dismas House in Manchester, Phoenix House in Franklin, Franklin Regional Hospital, Headrest in Lebanon, Granite Recovery in Manchester, Southeastern Community Services in Dover, Lydia's House in Somersworth, Sober Sisters in Somersworth, Live Free Structured Sober Living in Keene, Keystone in Nashua, Blueprint in Concord, and Willow in Vermont. These facilities reported back that since January 1, 120 Sullivan County residents have entered their facilities for treatment and continued on with some form of sober housing. So that's a significant number. These are just the agencies that reported back to us. In addition, there are 55 NH Core properties, that's the New Hampshire Coalition of Recovery Residences, that are certified sober houses. There's another 12 sober houses waiting for NH Core certification, and another 12 choosing not to apply. So these agencies did not respond. Sober house have a tendency to be private. If treatment is involved, they have a tendency to be more forthcoming with information. However, I do know, because of folks that have gone through trails and sought sober housing, that we also have additional residents in Laconia, Littleton, who are not listed on this, and Pentagon. So again, that's 120 individuals that are remaining in these facilities that are passing drug screenings, working, and paying their rent. Our hope is to get, we're not going to have room for 120, but our hope is to get a portion of these individuals back in Sullivan County and working. So our case manager for the DOC regularly has contact with Carroll Concrete, Eichenauer, new other business that have reached out to us to provide labor in Sullivan County. And it's a struggle for us. Again, our men and women going through treatment, our numbers are low. We'll be up to 9 on Monday, which is good. We're climbing in-house. Before the court shut down, our ability to provide the requested workforce in this county is low. And we're hoping a percentage of these individuals come back home. This is where they live. This is where they lived before they went into treatment and recovery housing. And they will hopefully provide a big boost to the workforce. I don't know if anyone has any questions.
First of all, I want to commend you for what you did, reaching out to people to be proactive about it versus being reactionary. As far as the occupancy inside of the facility itself, you have put a lot of time and effort into a very robust, well-developed trails program. And part of that, for building sober houses, that people could leave the trails program and go into housing. So my concern is that if we hit to 100% occupancy with this, which is not a bad thing, what happens with the people coming out of the trails program? How do they find housing, which is part of the reason why you built this in the first place?
Well, we would keep space for our trails residents. We would. Again, the purpose was to fill the positions of the individuals who went through treatment.
Right.
And again, the importance of that is this is our men and women that have gone through treatment and we know we're employed. So again, that's part of the trails. The track 4 in trails is actually work release. So the individuals that are leaving our facility will be going into sober housing. Will already be employed. We've also taken steps. The population is low. Again, the approval of the board was to take 5%, which is equivalent of about 2 individuals out of county to potentially work in it. So we have worked on forms, and we're deciding how we're going to bring that population back, those 1 or 2 individuals that are not Sullivan County residents. And so we've developed a workforce piece as part of that screening project. So preferably, if we're going to bring a couple of individuals into Sullivan House to live, we're hopefully bringing individuals back into the county that will work. Okay. So adding that workforce component to our screening process for any individual coming into the county who's not a resident will again benefit PBS, any of these agencies that are asking for help.
So I want to be clear that we're not getting a bottleneck because people coming out of the trails program have no place to go. That's my only concern, because if we don't have them able to go to housing, all the other things we're talking about kind of defeats the purpose of the trails program and what we're trying to do. So as long as that's being maintained and protected, what you do with the rest of the beds and so forth, I can support it. Just want to be sure that we don't lose out.
Historically, only about half the trails graduates have needed housing. Okay. So while the numbers are still so low, our throughput is it's a trickle. So we should be able to accommodate both, but be able to ramp up our occupancy from those other Sullivan County residents, just to make sure that we can service our debt, pay the utilities. So we'll hit a nice sweet spot, but we won't max out. And then as our trails production ramps up, we can accommodate fewer of those other Sullivan County residents. And, Dave and his team will be able to manage that.
35 to 45% of our population lives with, inadequate or unsafe housing, or no housing. The trails grads get dropped off the post office after spending 60 days trying to get them housing. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, 35 to 45% of our population leaves with no housing, housing that's not safe or inadequate. So to avoid dropping individuals off the post office, that practice should end. We'll be able to put folks in Sullivan House, get them working, and again, get them on the right path.
Thank you, Superintendent Barry. Representative O'Hearn, you have a question. Representative O'Hearn, go ahead.
Yeah, I do. And it's for the county manager or the superintendent of the corrections. But I want to apologize. I was not able to make the tour of the building, and hopefully I can do that at some point, working with either one of them to do that. But my question would be maybe it's a couple of them, but hopefully being in Claremont that we can somewhat give back to the community. There was a time when the corrections had, work release where they came down and did stuff in the communities. Is that something that's going to be on the calendar for this?
Yeah, we are still doing some community service projects. We're limited now by just the numbers in the DOC. We do have, with our policies and our procedures that we developed for the sober house, each resident living in Sullivan House has 8 hours of community service built in to their contract weekly. So again, our plan, with the community corrections officer on site, is to have these individuals, work in the community and make some progress.
Well, again, I hate to wear the two hats that I do, but I'm also talking as I hate to say this, but I'm thinking as a city councilor locally, so that's why I'm asking these questions, because there's always that give and take, and sometimes with the city, that it's not the same as the county wants. And I'm just trying to buffer this little, and hopefully that we can come together and.
Yeah, we will have community service. We will have a community service project scheduled weekly from Sullivan House. We'll have a community corrections officer on site, and again, that is part of the contract that each individual is going to sign that is living there. And the obligation will expand. So if we have someone that's working 24 hours a week, they're going to owe me 16 hours of community service or education. You're not going to work 24 hours and spend your time watching television. If folks are working 40 hours a week, we will owe us 8 hours of community service obligations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions of Superintendent Barry? I just have one, Superintendent Barry. When is Sullivan House going to open? A tentative date?
December.
December of this year?
Hopefully.
Yeah,
Okay, all right.
we're planning a ribbon cutting
Okay.
on or about the 1st of December.
1st of December.
But that is all tentative, and that depends on the progress of the last couple of months. And then before Christmas, we'd like to move in maybe 10 or 12 residents if we can, and then ramp up to a steady state capacity in January after the new year, which would get us at the, if we have about 18 to 20, that's when we'll be able to service our debt and cover our anticipated utilities costs. So that's kind of, we want to walk before we run, so that's why we figured if in the first month we can get 10 or 12 in there, and then add maybe another 10 or so in January. And it'll just give us a chance to ease into it, and the community corrections officer and the aftercare team can kind of adjust to this, this new process of just, checking in with folks and managing the weekly urinalysis screenings. And, this is a new thing for us, so we didn't want to just jump right in and fill it up on day one. So we thought that was a prudent course of action.
The workforce development will continue. We'll be partnering with Headrest to offer some of that training on-site in the facility, and we'll be partnering with the Recovery Center for Smart Recovery at the DOC, hopefully hosting some ANA meetings as well, and continuing with our Parenting Inside Out, our program at the DOC that is meant to continue with the TLC Recovery Center once they're released. So again, we're hoping we're going to keep moving.
And the ribbon cutting will be combined with an open house, kind of make it a day-long event, and just let anybody from the community walk in and check it out, ask us questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much, Superintendent Barry, Manager Furlan. Any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll move on. Next item, review and ratification of the August 31st, 2021 delegation minutes. And I believe you should all have a printed copy of those minutes, and I believe you also had a chance to review them online. So I will entertain a motion to approve these minutes.
Motion.
Okay, motion by Representative Stapleton. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Representative Merchant to approve the August 31st, 2021 delegation meeting minutes. Okay, are we ready for the vote? And again, this will be a roll call. Representative O'Hearn, when you're ready, please call the roll.
I'm sorry to hear who made the motion.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble.
Stapleton.
Yeah, Representative Stapleton moved and Representative Merchant seconded.
Okay. So, I'm ready.
Okay, you're ready. Please call the roll.
Representative Aaron.
Representative Aaron votes yes.
Representative Callum's not present, correct?
Correct.
And Representative Gotting.
Gotling.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yep. Yes.
Thank you. Representative Merchant.
Representative Merchant votes yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Oxingham.
Yes.
Representative Rollins.
Yes.
Representative Smith is not present.
Correct.
Representative Spilsbury. Sure.
Yes?
Thank you. Representative Stapleton.
Stapleton votes yes.
Representative Tanner.
Yes.
Representative Sullivan.
Sullivan votes yes.
And Representative, or the chair.
Yeah, the chair votes yes. The reason, what's the vote, Representative Hearn?
We have 11 yes.
Okay, 11 yes, 0 no. Okay, thank you very much. The motion is carried, minutes are approved. Okay, the other item, and this is up to the Representative Gottlieb, basically, in the Finance Committee, review and ratification of the August 17th, 2021 EFC minutes. I mean, I'm just offering this a convenience for you because I know your committee's busy. I don't know if you want to take a vote, but if,
We're not busy right now.
we're, okay. The only thing, if we do this, it'll be basically members of your committee, so I could turn it over to you for a minute if you're ready to
Yeah.
approve.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. They've been available to be read. I realized today when I asked about them, Sharon, I'd already read them. So, anyway, I would ask for a motion to approve the EFC meetings from the August 17th meeting.
And again, members of the EFC should be the only ones making
Right.
motions and voting on this one.
Second.
Okay, okay, go ahead, Representative Gottlieb, you know.
Right, are you taking a note or two? Do we
I'm
need-
signing the notes.
Oh, you're signing, okay. So can I just call on the people
Yeah, okay, yeah, just call
individually?
members of the committee.
Okay.
Representative Spilsbury make the motion?
Yes.
Motion
Oh, you
second.
did? Okay, second.
So Merchant made the motion and Spilsbury
No.
seconded it.
Gotling made the motion.
No,
Who makes the motion?
I'll make the motion and Representative Spilsbury will second it.
That's
How's
good,
that?
yeah.
Falling into line.
Who's on first?
okay, now I have to do see if I can do this by Representative Aaron.
Representative Aaron votes yes.
I'm trying to do, Representative Gottling votes yes. Representative Merchant,
Votes yes.
Representative Spilsbury,
Yes.
and Representative Tanner.
Yes.
That's
Run your
alphabetizing in my head.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you very much, Representative Gottlieb. Those minutes are approved. Okay, now, item 8, any other old business? Is there any other old business to become before this body? Okay, item number 9, any new business? The only thing is, and our Representative Smith isn't here, otherwise I would ask him to speak, but I believe on October 13th, I believe that's a Thursday, the redistricting committee, of which Representative Smith is the vice chair, is coming to Sullivan County. I believe it's going to be in Claremont, at the Claremont Savings Bank Community Room, which is at 152 South Street, to get public input on redistricting for Sullivan County, this whole area. Not only, I mean, the reps probably obviously is very important, but it also includes the state senate districts, the congressional districts, the executive councilor districts, and for you commissioners, the commissioners' districts. So if you want to have input, now's your opportunity. So I just want to make sure I make this announcement. I believe it's 7 p.m. on Thursday, October, I'm sorry, I've got a blank. I think it's the 13th. 13th, I'm sorry. So if people want, I plan to be there. So just to let you, for your information and the public's information, if they are interested in the issue of redistricting. So anything else under item 9, new business? Okay, so if there are no other new business, What I'm going to do now, based on advice from Representative Smith, I'm going to adjourn this meeting without any objections, and that way we don't have to take a roll call vote. Okay? All right, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much. And, okay, one other thing quickly. Sorry about that.
We're adjourned, that's it.
I do want to thank the Newport School District for allowing us to be here, and John Lund of Newport Community Television. Sorry about that. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate your patience and diligence, and especially want to thank the Nursing Home Work Group and Representative Sullivan for their hard work.